Vinaka. Vinaka Fesaitu Solomone. Bula everyone. NOA'IA Luis Antonio. The Bula Majaniden. Bula Olivalau, Rusula, Buretini, the Bula. Bula ela tukalevu. NOA'IA E MAURI Ravai Patiaki. The Bula Vinaka, the Bula May Papua New Guinea. Salote Mode. Sabun Vinaka, Mrs. Rigamoto, Vinaka nasema mai kuata yang sudah mulai Dubai, Kathy, Rogers, Makarita Resito Membula. Nambula Vinaka, Halise Mau Morasio, NOA'IA E MAURI, Nimbula Vinaka vakalevu sarana siamati kumai na singa Vinaka ni kua, singa lotulevu, tiko mai Viti, vatike ni Silandi, singa vukelulu tiko ike, Hawaii, ngosa tini na kaloka na mbongi, walu tiko na kaloka, mai Viti, ke New Zealand. Yes, Vinaka vakalevu sar. Thank you so much to everyone logging in from different parts of the world, from the Middle East, from the US, Nuitaka, Metaviuni, the Bula Vinaka, is Net Bakani, ni Vinaka, Siamatarchunga Moirana, Siamatikumai Nilandi, Chiochivai, Vinaka. We're all looking forward to this Talanoa session. This is to do with the Rotuman language. We were been so blessed. Yeah, at the beginning of the week, we had Tupe Solomon Tanawai, our Fijian Samoan sister, who came to start our motivational Monday sessions. So next Monday, we will have Darren Kamali, who will be on this show sharing his latest book that he's just launched, his poetry book. So look forward to join us on Monday. And then on Tuesday, we had Mrs. Marietta Ringamoto, who took us on a journey over to Netasiri, Navuso, the Vuravura, different parts of Fiji, as well to Rotuma. So that was a beautiful Talanoa session we had on Tuesday. And then yesterday, we had Professor Thane, Lady Fogden, from the University of Auckland. He's a professor in archaeology as well as an archaeologist who visited Rotuma not once, but twice, and he's planning to go again. And so I told Professor Thane, when he goes back to Rotuma, the next trip, I'm going with him. So Itu, maybe we should go with Thane on his next on his next trip. So Vinaka vakalevu Sara for everybody connecting in today, especially to our Rotuman families. We've been so blessed to have everyone connecting in from different parts of the world, meeting new Rotumans as well, getting to know them, and leading up to the Rotuman Language Week, which is coming up not next week, the following week. So we're so blessed today that we have Fesaitu Solomone, who is logging in from the beautiful city of Sails in Auckland, New Zealand. Bula Vinaka NOA'IA Fesaitu.
Bula Vinaka, Dr. Tarisi, and Bula Vinaka to Inamusi o Kali. And Faeksia and NOA'IA E MAURI to all our listeners tonight. So it's good to be on with Dr. Tarisi to talk about Rotuma and Rotuman language. Faeksia.
Yes, Vinaka Sara Fesaitu for accepting our humble request to get you to be on board as well this week. We had a long list of speakers that we invited, and we ran out of space of including everybody, but we told them that we will roll out another session of Rotuma Week in the next couple of months. So when Rotuma comes back on again, you'll definitely see more Rotumans joining this platform. So as we have been doing in the last couple of sessions, we're asking our speakers just to tell us a little bit about themselves. So if you can do that to Itu, just tell us a little bit about your family, your upbringing in Rotuma, and your journey over to Fiji, and your journey to Aotearoa. Vinaka vakalevu.
Vinaka, Dr. Tarisi Faeksia. I will probably introduce myself first in Rotuman, and then I'll come back to Vosa Vaka Langi. Faeksia, oto asa le Fesaitu Solomone, go lehen ne mutusa, monohe mutusa, ya sa itu ngangatu te kita, asne to rua, richeli ma kirisi, to fata fani mutusa ma tapi masih anhan pot ino tau atau hinta henni o inafa ma tapi masih mutusa om hinsi singa tu rua om mismol anggota on liom dilit atau ma hinsi siangta tu hinsi singa tapi ma ngomasang ven hi hack ma senghen full atau misa konwangta atau fata tapi ma man hanap atau pod si hanap tuangta atau mapenghen mafuita on behunda hen tuang atau pod te atau lala ni atau konwangta omis nohe atau misa hanu ngatsi te mutusa ka atau mis fongri te mutusa mufmairo angang si huni elit ni kilang lele po ya sa hanu ngache ti mutusa te lang dia ti atau lala ni atau konwangta. Yes, so to our non-Rotuman speakers for tonight, my name is Fesaitu Solomone, as Dr. Tarisi introduced me. I come from a big family. My parents, Kirisi and Richeli, they both, my mother's from Wenafa, and also in Mutusa, and my father is also from Mutusa and Nuitaka. And so as in any Rotuman, we are related across the island, but we are very much fortunate as part of a family. Our parents had 8 of us, got 4 brothers and 3 sisters. I'm the 5th in line in our family. Yeah, I won't say my age, but I'm sure you can tell, probably 21 and never aged. But yeah, totally, that's basically in a nutshell in terms of a family. I grew up in the island. I was born on the island as well. And I grew up in the island, went to school. My primary school was in Mutusa Primary from class 1 to 6. And then I went to Rotuma High School, which is the only high school on the island. And I spent 4 years at Rotuma High School from Form 1 to Form 4. And then I moved to Fiji. I was very fortunate. And I have to say, I have to acknowledge Mrs. Emeli Fachaki, who got me into Dudley High School. And I managed to spend my last 3 years of Form 5, 6, and 7 at Dudley High School in Turek. So yeah, from there, I actually, after high school, there was a tussle between going to University of the South Pacific. But as you know, as every family, I was the only one that successfully made it to finish Form 7 as part of high school. And my hopes for my family was actually pinning on that. And so I had to look after my parents and, put my other 3 brothers to school. And so I had to look for a job. So I finished in 1994 from high school in Form 7. And then actually TV was quite new in Fiji at that time. So Fiji Television was set up. And it was a good journey in terms of my journey, in terms of that space, was the fact that I was applying for jobs and, coming from a family, money is very tight at the time. And so I was very lucky to actually be part of my family that supports me. But I was very determined, if I couldn't go to university, I had to look for a job in terms of Fiji. And so at that time in 1995, television was quite new. And so, I decided to look for a job and I sent my applications everywhere. The funny bit, and I wanted to highlight in this part here, which we always talk about, I had to walk we were living at Matuanga, and I had to walk all the way to drop my applications all the way from in Lodala Beach, where Lees were based there. There was a junior accountant. And then I had to make my way looking for jobs. I asked all along the way. So if you're familiar with Fiji, you'll know from Lodala Beach all the way to Nambua. I walked all that way because bus fare, I had only, 50 cents at that time. So walked from Vatuanga to Lodala to drop an application and walked all the way, dropping my application to, Morris Head, all the supermarkets that can I find along the way. Arbi Patel, I walked all the way to town. And so my first application to be dropped off was handwritten and dropped at the factory, the biscuit factory. And then I made my way to the last one, which was Fiji TV at Gorrie Street in 1996. And so ended my application. My results came out for Form 7. And, like I said, I really wanted to go to university, but couldn't. So it was like, you either have to work, and if you can't find a job, then, there's no hope. So yeah, I did that. And Fiji TV was my last one. And then my bus fare that was left, I actually paid for a bus fare from Gorrie Street back home to Vatuanga. So, it was such a beautiful journey in terms of that. And then I got hired to work at TV in May. So, got the interview started in May. TV was quite new in Fiji at that time in 1996. And it was the beginning of, a career that I spent 10 years working at TV. And it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I learned all the concepts of production, content, and working in an environment in terms of television was really great. Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, that was basically my life there. And then in 2006, I decided, 10 years at TV with so much work, my family hardly see me, but also I think I was looking for an opportunity to expand internationally and, do something different. And so when I had the chance, I decided in 2005 was to send an application to Sky Television here in New Zealand to see if there's any opportunity here. And I thought, with a big country like New Zealand, it's a chance, 1 in a million chance you're gonna get an interview. And so when I got the reply that yes, you can come for an interview, I was actually shocked and overwhelmed with it. But yeah, I managed to get an interview. I went back and I thought I'm gonna leave Sky Fiji TV, and that started my journey here. in terms of moving from the island and moving here to New Zealand. And so 2006, I established myself here in New Zealand. And, residency was a big thing. 2007, when I got it, it was a huge opportunity to actually settle here in New Zealand. So yeah, that's the journey along the way. In terms of language, I grew up learning the language, fluent culture. Everything was taught. It was also taught in school, in primary school. It's something that's very evidently at that time. There's exams for Rotuman language. Even at high school, the dance, we learn everything proper in terms of the language and culture. So that's the journey in terms of moving from Rotuman, growing up from Rotuma till now. So yeah, it's a huge and a long journey in terms of me living here in New Zealand. So I have been here over 10 years, 15 years. So yeah.
Well done, well done. I still remember your Talanoa. I can visualize Lodala Beach, and the walk along the road. I understand that day was a hot day too, and the application was all handwritten, and you were very determined. And that's quite a long walk, along the road. And I was just trying to picture, the struggle, that you had to go through. And I'm sure our listeners as well, some of them had to go through the same thing, either maybe borrowing $1 or $2 from someone just so it can allow you to, reach some place where you can apply for jobs. So you are one of those stories. So wow, Vinaka vakalevu itu for your willingness to share that story. I think that story, when you think back, will always bring certain types of emotions, as well, where you had to walk under the hot sun and taking your application, and then PGTV accepted your application. What how can I say it? It can be like a bitter sweet story.
And I think that's exactly we and our journey as well. We met both at Fiji TV when we were producing and the Talanoa program, the Fijian vernacular program. So it's a great in terms of looking back, in terms of the journey, it's quite interesting. And we talk about when I went into supermarkets and to asking for a job. Look, if you have any opportunity, left my phone number. I was quite determined, and I was like, I'm going to get a job. And so it's really interesting because a lot of us can resonate with that. The journey is maybe slightly different, but the aim is and the goal is always to get somewhere.
And so I can picture you with the application forms, going from shop to shop, place to place. And I'm sure the thought of your family was in the forefront of your mind, was it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that was the hope of my parents, because all my siblings, they dropped out of school, they got married. But I must say, I do have a lot of respect for my two elder siblings, because it was through them that I was able to go to Fiji and to be actually to help support in terms of paying me to school. And so, it's a tradition in terms of Pacifica cultures that we paid forward by ensuring that the cycle of us putting our siblings to school and our families, our extended families, help that we put out. So yeah, it's that sort of respect in terms of that space. But also one of the interesting things is that the opportunity I was able to working there. My brother-in-law was an inspector at the police station. So I had an opportunity to actually look into, the accounts and stuff. And so the work experience gave me another opportunity and avenue to actually on that scale in terms of the figures. I'm not a figure person in terms of accounting finance, but I kind of like the fact that it was an opportunity to actually delve into areas that I'm not comfortable with yet.
Wow. And you mentioned Dudley High School. I spoke to Mrs. Marietta Ringamoto, who also went to Dudley, and I can see some ex-Dudley also listening in tonight. I think someone said purple power. Wow, Vinaka Dudley, and it's nice to see, ex-scholars of Dudley doing so well in different parts of the world, as well as the teachers who were there too. Mrs. Nirmala Balram, who is now in Wellington, Kelera Nganivatu is now in Mexico, There's one of my neighbors in Dolisuva, Merenda Ngasi, also went to Dudley High School. So, Vinaka Dudley, to see all the products of the school doing so well.
And I think we did have a Rotuman teacher who settled here as well. When I was in Dudley, was Thierry Williame. So she was here. She's also a teacher at Dudley at that time. So, but one of the interesting things now that you brought it up is the fact that when I was in Dudley, when you come from the island language, the English language, I struggled a bit because we don't speak English every day or fluently. So the interaction I had with Dudley in terms of the English space and this English language was very, I had to learn you have to be 6 steps or 10 steps ahead in terms of the language. And so shifting from Rotuman language into a purely dominant English environment, the language, I really had to learn it as fast as possible. So it was a lot of reading at the library, going down to Silver Library, getting my hands on any books that I can, and watching a lot of TV in the beginning. That's how it got me.
Wow, so the TV also helped you to,
yep,
I was going to ask you what were some tips. So I'm glad you mentioned that reading was a key part of you picking up the English language. Wow, so well done. And you also mentioned in Rotuma that even though you spoke Rotuman, you were fluent at home, it was also taught in school. Tell us a little bit about that, what you learned in school.
Yeah, so the Rotuman language, so we had cultural people that do the language, and we were also taught, so the curriculum in Fiji in terms of Rotuman language, I think Elizabeth Inia was part of the designers of the curriculum, the Ministry of Education in Fiji. So we had there is resource for us, and we set exams. So the language was very much, we had at that time when I was there, we had Susauti area, and Fuata, which was from Savley. So he was teaching us this Akanita from Itamuta. And then, our elderly people will know, but they were very much the people that have helped us through the culture. And then when I moved to high school, it was Teito. Teito was at the time, and so is Susauti. But the language was basically taught, although we learned it and we fluent at home, it is the written form of the language that we were taught in school, and the formalities in terms of language, but also the art and craft as well. So we learned to create crafts in both male and female areas of the Rotuman culture. So we learned all of that. We were able to. I was talking to some of the youths earlier on last year about what we used to do. And those are things that we were literally taught. At home, my grandmothers taught us how to weave. My siblings, especially as girls, you were asked to sit down and weave. So weaving, my mom also, they weave, and also the fans. My mom is more skilled in fishing, but my grandmothers were the ones that actually sat us down. So you learn from right from planting the pandanus to cleaning it to actually pueke is what we call in Rotuman, and then the whole process. As kids, sometimes you don't want to do it, but you have to do it because it's part of the learning that you have. And look, and it's something that I must look back and say it's fond memories as well, as to your point. Of how when we grew up, these were things that we thought that we didn't value at all at that time. However, moving away from the island, you learn to value the language, the culture, and it's kind of you revisiting all that knowledge back again.
Wow, that's so good. Wow, look at that. So do you think the Rotuman language and the culture and the arts are still being taught in Rotuma today?
I can't guarantee that it's taught, but I definitely, that's something that needs to be promoted and taught as well. I believe there is still some curriculum books around, but I just feel that I think the language needs to be taught from year 1, class 1, right up till high school, and the opportunity for cross-learning. But the language, and to you, as we talked about in terms of the language space, it's something that needs to be consistently carried rather than having stops, and not carrying it on. But yeah, it will be interesting to see the landscape in terms of Fiji, the Rotuma, and the language. But yeah, we had cultural advisors and people who teach us, especially the written language, which we will touch later on, I know. But it's what is very poor in terms of people globally, and including our island. The written form of the language is very poor. That's what I observe as well.
See, that's really nice to know. In terms of the spoken language, that's fine. Yeah, you speak it every day at home, but it's a written and I really like as well the crafts component. So it's really empowering to see that. And I'm sure for those of us who are listening in, if this can be encouraged, maybe if it's also done in school, but maybe also outside the school at home, where the weaving and the planting of the voi, all of those things should be brought back. Yeah, that's my vision. Yeah. Oh, Vinaka vakalevu. Itu. And I think you mentioned about your memory of growing up in Rotuma. Are there any other highlights of your childhood that you want to share with us? Or memories of being, a young girl hanging out on the beautiful paradise of Rotuma?
Yes, the memories is like, I don't want to even leave, thinking about it, why should we leave the island because of its beauty? But one of the things that I wanted to highlight as well is that growing up we grew up in church. Religion was a big thing, and I grew up as a Seventh-day Adventist. One of the things that I want to highlight as well is the fact that we were taught the Bible was to be read from the first chapter in Rotuman, because we had a Rotuman Bible. And the highlight for me is that whilst you're enjoying the beauty and the swimming and working together with people, the highlight was the ability for you to actually learn, and this is where the learning of the language in the written form was kind of engraved. And we have that Bible, Rotuman Bible, all around. But as our upbringing in terms of a family, that's what we had to do. We had to read the Bible. It's consistently been pushed, and the Rotuman Bible verses, and plus the English version as well. But the other part too, and I really love the biggest memory for me is the growing up as a kid in Rotuma as a child. The way the model of relationship and working together in Rotuma. And one of the things is to do with collaboration. And I did speak a lot about this is in Rotuma, everybody works together. If someone's got something happening in their family, everyone goes and supports and works together. That's the relationship and the respect that people have on the island. But now, those are the things that I believe is starting to shift away. Only because the introduction of money, and money becomes a big thing now. But as growing up there, it's everything fresh. The sea, you have a whole beach to yourself. You have fresh food. You don't have, and I think one of the biggest things for me, you don't have the things that we have today. But one of the things that I really appreciate is the fact that it's this happiness. You live a happy life. You're not worried about what you eat tomorrow. If you don't, sometimes we don't have, we don't have the meats that everybody has, the chicken, but the fish was our sustained diet. And that's something, learning the skills from my mother and my father for fishing. We all were taught. I was in the canoe fishing with her when I was just a baby. So I was a little, so, you're already there watching. So that's the learnings. And I think that's the thing that about me growing up on the island, and many people are not fortunate to have that experience. But growing up on the island, I think those are the things, the highlights of, learning. You've been taught to love one another, to respect one another, respect the culture in terms of the protocols and the ceremonial stuff. That's stuff that I will, I kind of hated it, but now when I look back on it, it's what's retained me in terms of the space I'm in, and learning and sharing that at the moment with our young ones and with anyone. Yeah, so it's it's a journey, but it's also the wealth of knowledge that I could never take away from that memory. Learning to fish, learning to do this, learning to plant. Both my parents really taught us as children, because it's 8 of us. That's a big family.
Big family, dear.
Big family to feed.
But that's so nice of your parents to involve the children, and that itself is learning, right? And it's nurturing you as a young, Rotuman girl, and to become a woman. All of those skills have is part of you, and now you are utilizing that in the space, as you said, in Auckland. Wow, well done. And just to say that Ravai Fatiaki just mentioned here that what you just sharing today, that's something that we, the Fiji-born Rotumans, miss out on.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that, you can say that you are blessed in a way, that you were raised in Rotuma and you were able to remember all those trainings that you've had over the years until now. So Vinaka vakalevu Ravai Fatiaki for sharing your thoughts about that. And there's a few other people who are all saying hello to you. Dina S, saying that she remembered you fresh from Rotuma at school with your long plaited hair.
Of course. All grown up now.
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go. Wow, look at that. So Vinaka vakalevu itu for sharing that and taking us back to Rotuma to remember your humble upbringing. And of course, it's so beautiful just hearing you saying how you go fishing with your mom even when you were a baby. Wow, that's amazing. Having a beach all to yourself, man. Yeah. That's what a lot of people pay thousands of dollars for.
For a view. Yeah, we pay. It's funny because you said it. You don't appreciate. We don't appreciate. And one of the things coming even out of Fiji to here, you don't appreciate what you have back home until you're out of it. And one of the things was the view, the beach. Homes here, we have a home right next to the beach. You go whenever you want to swim, midnight or whatever, you just go. But here, it's just paying for a view for $1 million. It's not worth it, and the beach is not even clean like it was back home. So those are the things that I think we take for granted, but when you come away from it, that is what we miss out. Yeah.
So I'm glad that you can picture it in your head when you're homesick. Because the beauty of the island will always be there. So let's hope that we can all join Professor Thane when he goes back on his research trip.
Yeah.
Then the two of us can be his research assistants. Yeah. Vinaka vakalevu. So in terms of the space now that you are occupying here in Aotearoa, how are you utilizing those skills that you brought from home in Rotuma, as well as being educated in Fiji and the training you had at Fiji TV, and now coming over to Aotearoa in terms of the teaching of the Rotuman language? Can you just share with our listeners, especially our families in Aotearoa, in terms of the role you're playing for the teaching of the Rotuman language?
Faeksia. So yeah, in terms of the Rotuman language, and I think this is an interesting space. When I first came here in 2006, one of the things I first observed was the Rotuman language, and it's not really fluent. The fluency in terms of the people that are here, it's mainly is at the top. The young ones really don't speak the language, and so everything is mostly run in English. And so for me, I think it kind of hit home that we're away from home. How do I maintain the language, and how do I consistently have that conversation when we come to a function? So arriving here, that was the gap that I felt. The language was very much lacking, and the gap between our elders and our young ones, and even the little ones. So some of them can actually understand the language but cannot speak back. And so in our conversations, I find that I love the Rotuman conversations because I find that the humor in it is much more stronger than actually being just sharing it, or we just joking or having a conversation in English. And so I started to think about what could be the vision for me if I could help develop that. And so when I became the youth leader under the New Zealand Rotuman Fellowship, I decided to work on a project for 5-year long term in terms of the youth space, and present it back to our executive team and our youth members. It was well received. But yeah, it didn't go according. And I know you were very much part of it at Creative New Zealand. But you know, I believe the whole idea was that I was involving our late Reverend Ematama, Whikau Ematama, and also the late Hunta Aliti Williame. Those were the people I was trying to bring in, and also Hunta Isipeti Inia at that time. And I know Isipeti Inia and the three of them had a lot to do with our Rotuman community here in terms of the support. But the idea was that when I saw that, it was a huge opportunity for our people to actually tap into it. But yeah, unfortunately, it wasn't the right time. The whole plan was to develop the language to a point that our young ones could be fluent in 5 to 10 years. And that means consistent in terms of the engagement in the space. And the final one was for us to go and visit the Rotuma and to take, because the majority of them that live here have never been to the island. And so when you're sharing about the island and you're quite passionate about it, I know they're listening and they want to, but they're missing out on a lot of things as well. So yeah, definitely moving from there, after 10 years, our space and our interaction as well. And I must take my hat off to you and acknowledge you for your work as well, in terms of your support. And so in 2016, we re-engaged again. And I know you wanted me to work in the PCAP project. And so that was the beginning of our Rotuman community actually coming back in terms of the language space. And so when we finished the museum project, I know you said to me, let's take the language. How about we take your project, your proposal, and present it to PEC? One of the things that I always say, I've always run away from it. I never saw myself as someone teaching the language, because my work was seen as just a coordinator and bringing the together. I never ever thought or even saw myself as a teacher. But one of the things that when I reflected while I was here and asking these people to all come to the space, they were also telling me that you should teach the language. And one of them, the late Mrs. Aliti Williame, when I actually put her into the space to teach our youth the language in our first camp ever. And so that just really, when she said it to me, I kind of thought, no. I said to her, I'm not a teacher. I'm actually I'm passionate about the language and I want it to survive and to be taught, but I don't see myself as a teacher of the language. And all of that changed when we took the proposal to PEC and you encouraged me, look, let's take it. And my words to you exactly was, I will get the elders to come in to teach and I will just play as a supporting role again. And, I reached out to our elders here, the ones that I could, unfortunately, because, commitment, or they have got other, and they're old, and I have to respect that as well, the space. And so it all turned around, as you said to me, it's your turn, you have to do it. It has to be you, because of the teaching has to be both in English and Rotuman. It's a bilingual teaching. And so if the expectation, if PEC approves it, which is Pacific Education Center, then you will have to do it, and the designing of resource as well. And I have never, I'm not even a teacher, and so I've never done that before. I think the other part too, and I declined it with you, I don't want to do it because I was actually studying at that time. I was studying, my aim was after 20 years, and I was able to go into university after leaving from Dudley. So it was always a goal for me, and it took me 20 years to actually get into university. So that's the reason why I went into the University of Auckland here. I managed to opportunity to get into the pathway of MBA. And so that was, to me, was not my time to actually, I'm only going to play a supporting role. But yeah, to cut the long story short, I actually came into the space to teach design at the same time with studying and working full time. And it was then that, when you handed me that role, you said, no, you have to do it because of those reasons. I knew it's already been approved. I cannot off. So yes. I became a teacher overnight. But teaching was never in my books because my mind was television, media content, and the work that I was doing, and doing a business degree was to kind of create a space for myself, an opportunity to create my own company or my own business, and to go further up, to step out from what I was doing. So that was what it is. And from 2017 till now, the language at Pacifica Education Center, I must take my hat off and acknowledge not just with you, but also Christine Newmanen, who is really the person who really fought to at the on the platform under Rotuma. And so, you know, and her staff was really helpful. And so that's the journey of our language. It's got me into teaching, but it was through that I started to do all the research, the work in terms of the language space. Yeah, and it's taken us. We've got both two classes, which is the work of in terms of an introduction class, and now we have a conversational class. We look deeper into the culture, of our Rotuman language and culture. So yeah, that's the journey in terms of where we at. And I know you wanted to ask about the work with the ministry. Ministry for Pacific's people. The whole journey about putting the language where, as we talked about it, was a journey of getting a space and a platform, and then the opportunity to push to get the language week recognized through the ministry. And so, you know, I must also acknowledge the work of our community, our New Zealand Rotuman Fellowship, the groups around New Zealand in terms of Canterbury. We also have, you know, our groups up here, the Auckland Rotuman Fellowship as well. And then, you know, the work of the church groups as well that have supported the language and also the language week as well. So yeah, that's where we're at in terms of this is our second year in terms of the Rotuman language as well.
Wow, well done. That's wonderful. I think in terms of education, as you said, it took you 20 years, right?
Yes.
From leaving Dudley High School to go over to university. So for those of you who are listening, if you think 20 years is not long enough, Itu did it, right?
Yeah.
Was able to graduate from the University of Auckland, getting her Masters of Business Administration, MBA. So congratulations, Itu, for getting your qualification. And it's just wonderful to see, you know, the struggles you went through, working on that hot, sunny day, taking your application, and fast forward to University of Auckland of getting that piece of paper and fulfilling that dream of yours to go to university. What a wonderful, beautiful story of sacrifice, right? That you had to do for your family, and now you're doing something that you love. Wow, well done. Now, for those of our Rotuman families in New Zealand or around the world who are interested in learning from you the Rotuman language, what should they do? How do they get hold of you, and how does it work?
Faeksia. So in terms of the Rotuman language, because I'm teaching at the Pacifica Education Center, so there's a number of international students that are joining us as well. So I've got students as far as around the Pacific, also Fiji, students from Fiji, got students from Canada, the US, around New Zealand as well. The majority comes from New Zealand. At the moment, it's free. And, you know, the classes, we're about to finish the term, but yeah, definitely through the Pacific Education Center, you can reach out, or if you want to reach out to me, I'm also on Facebook, and so people can just reach out and ask me questions. I do have a lot around, you know, globally, people asking, but I also want to emphasize as well, I'm not a linguist. It was the passion for teaching the language where it took me, and also not a teacher as well. And so, you know, that's my disclaimer for tonight. But I think when my students come through, it was the passion of what I've kind of articulated to them, that this is the journey. And, you know, I've accepted the journey of being pushed back into the language space. And every time I try to run away from it and say, no, I can't, it always comes back. But, you know, as a lot of them see it here, it's your calling and you need to take it on. So yeah, definitely, you know, I do have work across in terms of working across, right, through organizations. I'm working on projects, then include even Harvard University, the AUT here, the university here, also various universities in terms of not only the language space, but my space in terms of my my personal work as well. So yeah, definitely, it's those areas. You know, I'm keen for people to reach out. The Pacific Education platform has got emails and a website that you can reach out. But yeah, we have terms in the year that language gets, you start from a introduction level and we move into a conversational level. But yeah, the languages I say to a lot of the students, I run from Fiji and the Pacific, from Solomons. I've got students from Solomons, even in Cook Islands. So yeah, and one of the things that Dr. Tarisi, and I think we talked about this in terms of the language and what I'm seeing coming through, that our Rotuman people, the other races are dominating. It's more Samoans and Fijians, and they're either married or married with Rotumans, or they have an eagerness to learn a new language. And our Samoan students, I must say, are doing really, really well. So I've got Niuean students, Indian students. So that language journey has really helped, and people have really, really embraced the language and loved it. And only because this parts of the language is so intriguing, not just for students, but also for across the world. So as for Rotumans, I think this is the challenge. We need to actually work at our language, not just the spoken language, but the written language needs to be looked at as well. Yeah. Faeksia.
Wow, beautiful. Wow, that's wonderful. And I think as well, Itu just acknowledging, the New Zealand government, for recognizing the need to teach this beautiful language in Aotearoa. And I think it's kind of spurring on the need to kind of prioritize the teaching of the language. As you will know, that the UNESCO mentioned about the language being what's the word that it uses? Is it endangered or
Vulnerable.
is it vulnerable? Can you just explain a little bit about that, and how do you feel about what UNESCO said and now what the New Zealand government is trying to do to help this beautiful language to be alive or to continue to be used?
Yeah, definitely. And I was going to acknowledge the ministry part of it later on, but definitely the ministry has a lot to play, the Ministry for Pacific's people and the New Zealand government as a whole. But the language in terms of the listing in the UNESCO, they've listed as vulnerable. So that means they've recognized that, the language is still spoken. But yeah, in terms of the number of people, they're listed as about only 30, I think 30,000. 3,000 people actually can speak the language, not 30, 3,000 as part of the documentation. But that was way back in 2011, I think around that time when the Guardian listed it. However, if you move now to where we're at, if I look at the New Zealand landscape, and so the criteria they put in terms of the language, like, we are clearly at the endangered part in terms of the language here, just here in Aotearoa, is only because only the elders can speak the language. So that's a generational thing. Our kids, the young ones and young adults, cannot speak the language fluently. Now, as part of what we looked here in terms of the language, the Rotuman language does really well in terms of the spoken fluency, only because in terms of the data and the statistics, the influx of Rotumans that came here around the same time I did, till now, they are more fluent Rotumans that can speak the language.
I see.
That's why the data for the Rotuman language in terms of the government has slightly moved up. So we were doing a little bit better than most of the languages in the Pacific. Now, and that's only because there's only 900 Rotumans here. However, as you know, in terms of the New Zealand statistics, if you part Rotuman, it will dominantly take the dominant race. If I'm part Fijian, then the stats will take you as Fijian rather than Rotuman. So it may be purely looking at that. So the primary data versus the secondary data only takes the primary. So if you part Tongan, the Tongan takes the stats, the count. So that's the work that I've been trying as well to push, to have both the reflection of the secondary data. Now, and that means we can have a clear indication. So the data is very subjective at the moment. So that's why pushing the data up will give us a good reflection, because I believe that Rotumans here, they're more part Rotumans rather than full Rotumans. And so that data, we haven't captured it fully. But if we do, then we'll see that there might be a situation in terms of moving up in terms of the data and the people. But yeah, in terms of that language space and moving it on, yeah, definitely here in New Zealand, it is endangered. Now, if we go back to the island in Fiji, I don't know about Fiji state. There's over 10,000 people in Fiji. Our island has only 1.5, 1,500 people to 6, based on the latest, just the latest stats.
Mm.
The Rotuman language is very much alive in the island.
Right.
But Fiji, that's a data that has to be gauged in terms of the fluency in Fiji. But here in New Zealand, that's where we looked at. There's a bit of a growth in terms of fluency and people able to speak the language. And yeah, I must acknowledge the work of the ministry, yeah, in terms of actually supporting us and helping us with funding. And across, it's not just our Rotuman language, it's across all the Pacific languages that are under the umbrella. They've been support of funding. We don't have that basically in Fiji. We have that opportunity here in New Zealand, and that gives us good space to actually promote our language and to, as the government says, our languages thrive. And that's why we're able to move our work fast. And one of the biggest things, and I must say, I'm not going to reveal it now. Actually, I think it's already been publicly advertised that Pacifica Media Network is going to have a Rotuman language program, radio program, as well. So, these are all the work that's been happening on the back end to push our Rotuman language to a stage. But also acknowledging, I must say, the people who are behind the scenes as well, our community, who's been working in tirelessly. Our young ones has been really involved, and they're really embracing the language. So it's a huge shift in terms of that. They're not fluent, nor they can speak, but they understand. Some of them understand the language. So this will give an opportunity for us to share the language more on a platform. But yeah, the work has been there. If we don't do it, if we weren't in the space now, there's a possibility that, the language in certain pockets of the world, it could just reach that stage. But that means it comes back to us as the guardians and the protectors of our language. And that's something I wanted to raise as well in terms of the language, that the language is a gift, and a gift that is given for us. And that's why if you recognize the gift, then you recognize the value that the language needs to be embraced and taught and actually valued in terms of what we're doing in the space. So that's how I see it in terms of the language. The shift is there, vulnerable in terms of that, yeah, but in terms of the landscape here, I could see it. But yeah, when you go back home, it's a different scale altogether. But yeah, that's only because someone has put forward to the UN, only 3,000 people speak the language. It could be right, but yeah, in terms of there's over 15 to 20,000 people, 10 to 15 around the population of our Rotuman people. But again, the threat of the language does come when intermarriages happen.
Yes.
It could be that, as you have 2 cultures in the house, or even 3, the language could be slowly making its way to a point that it's not fully spoken.
Wow, that's a really good point for those of us who are from Rotuma listening in. I think that's a really good point when it comes to mixed heritage. If it's Rotuman and Tongan, please tell the Tongans to wait and make sure the Rotuman language to be highlighted. And so as the Samoan and the others, of course, I'm just making that comment. But I think it'll be nice to balance it. I mean, each family will have to decide it too. But one thing I'm also looking at, congratulations for the radio station. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's nice to hear that they're putting up a program which is really to support alignment in terms of the New Zealand landscape platforms for our language to be promoted. So I mean, they advertise in terms of people to work, and so opportunities for people to actually gauge that space as well.
That's beautiful. Look at that. And then I was also thinking, just when you were saying about the radio and the language classes at BEC, I know I may be pushing the envelope, but I can foresee in the not too distant future that maybe they might have the Rotuman dance and music at the Polyfest. I'm looking at that too. So
Yeah, definitely. No, and also, I must say too, to mention as well, our community does have language classes as well. So they are face to face at the moment. Look, and I always encourage everybody, wherever you are in the space, the Auckland Rotuman Fellowship is doing ARFGI is doing a language class. There's also the New Zealand Rotuman Fellowship that has a Love My Language. Our young ones, we everywhere, and for me, it's kind of like, whatever you can do to help support our language, please do so. Wherever you can teach, if you can share the knowledge of your language and culture to somebody, so much the better. What's happening leading into language week, and it's going to be happening every year. Our ministries, and that's why people from the ministries are looking to learn the language so they can actually present it back, and or not just the Rotuman language, all other languages. I'm actually looking to learn the Tongan language, which is part of my father's heritage. So I want to learn the Tongan, and I also want to learn the Samoan, and Fijian. I can speak it, but not fluently. But at least if you, in a basic concept, it's good for you to understand languages in that way. So yeah, no, look, I hear you. It's also been discussed right now in terms of the Polyfest space and the opportunity for Rotuman students to actually present at Polyfest here in New Zealand. So, our Pacifica people are well supported here. And it's the biggest population. It's the biggest population in across the world. But Auckland holds the majority of Pacifica people, and so is a Rotuman people. Yeah. So definitely, look, I don't disagree with you. Languages there, definitely.
Yeah, that's so good, and I'm happy that you can hear that there are language programs happening all around New Zealand, and you said the more the merrier. So for those of you who are listening, there are face-to-face classes, and you are doing the online classes, Itu?
Yes, all online at the moment, so through PEC. Yes,
Wow.
so definitely.
And if there are people who are listening in who want to contact you or interested to be part of these Zoom online classes with PC, how do they get hold of you?
So yeah, it has to go through the PEC website, registration and there. But yeah, if you need help, look, I have people asking for help in terms of structure and the teaching as well. But definitely keen to support. Like I said before, I'm not a teacher, nor am I a linguist. But I think it's my passion. I believe it's my passion and my love for the language, and actually been thrown back into it. I can't run away from it because everywhere I go, also the translation work here, but also the integrity of our language. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that before we end, in terms of the language, the way the language works. And one of the things I kept hearing from people asking me these questions: does the Rotuman language belong to a church group, a Methodist or Catholic? One of the things, and it's part of the class that I teach, the foundation of the language. And we must remember, before colonization and missionaries came into Rotuma, the Rotuman people had there's no separation. We were just Rotuman natives, and therefore the language belonged to us. And one of the things in terms of that is we did a project last year in terms of the museum and the language. And the thing is, the way that the language was documented through the Methodist Church was in full form, in the long form. The way the language was documented through the Catholic was in short form, and that's where the confusion. So the documentation by Hogarth in the beginning, working with the Methodist and the Catholic, he kind of put it together. So everything kind of changed when Churchwood came, and Churchwood, as a reverend for the Methodist Church, he's also a linguist, and so the alignment of the language to bring the language together was what he did to work with Misolami, who was a native, in terms of the sounds, the phonetics of the language, but also the alignment that the Rotuman language is both spoken in both long form and short form. And I think this is the part that intrigues researchers and linguists across the world who wants to learn about Rotuma. And to Professor's words yesterday, Rotuma is so fascinating. Yes. Only because not just the language, and that's why a lot of people are coming in, non-Rotumans, non-Indigenous Rotumans are coming in to learn the language because they are just fascinated by the concept of the language. but also the metathesis of the language, which the researchers highlight the importance of why our vowels get, it gets moved around, and our words end in consonants. So structure of the language which Churchward did was mainly to align the phonetics of the language plus the written language. So he's done it really, really well. And so language does evolve in times in terms of the pronunciation, but as it evolves, the structure of how Churchward worked and reviewed by international linguists was given up. So that shows that he really did a good job. And I always tell people, no, the language doesn't belong to the Catholic or doesn't belong to the Methodist. The work of the Churchward and the early missionaries in 1928 really recognizes the first time it was documented. However, the work of Church was to align both, and it's very clear what he did. But also our language has that layers. It's about 4 layers in the language in terms of what we have now, which covers both the Melanesian. And I think I heard that Dr. Paul Garrity is going to talk more on the program. And he is the person that recognizes we can go on tonight about it, but I just wanted to highlight the language and its layers. So we have a Melanesian, a Micronesian, a Polynesian layer in 2 structures, and then a unique Aboriginal structure that have no idea where that language, which Church would really acknowledge, doesn't even know where they came from. So it is a bit of the colors, perpero, some of the words there under that strata. There's a lot of them, which none of the Pacific has it. So that's just how unique our Rotuman language, and that's why my emphasis to our people is, you don't know how good it is until I actually came back, because you're so used to, I just speak it, it's a norm. But I don't really appreciated the Rotuman language as much as I did when I started. It's just the in-depth knowledge, research, and also the value, the way the language switches is very, even the math students were so happy, and they're so intrigued at how did all of this come about. But yeah, that's we're the only language in the Pacific that holds on to 2 forms. One is a long, one is short, and normally, as the researchers call it, some short form, long form, incomplete, complete form, and many other ways they put. There's a lot of them that did research, and I think for someone going to be a linguist, I would encourage them to actually go further into the Rotuman language. But no, I just wanted to highlight that before we go. The language belongs to everyone, including us as Rotumans. We are the real guardians and protectors of the language. And that's the gift that we've been given as Rotumans. And if we understand the gift that was given, we will value it. And we will make sure that we protect it for the integrity of that, things don't change. Because I can tell you so many things in the written across the world. One word is written in 500 different types. This means the written be lacking now.
Wow, that is so beautiful. And I just saw, I think Ravai Fatiaki was saying that USP offers a USP course, which maybe I'll ask Paul Garrity on Sunday to explain a little bit about that. So it's really nice to see, Aotearoa taking the lead, as well as seeing this in Fiji, and USP being a regional institution offering that as well for, for USP and the region. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and it's not only, I think USP last year implemented, it's really good that the universities are doing it. And our language is also NZQA. It's a New Zealand level as well. So, I mean, you were here when we did our NZQA as well. But also, I think there are other people who teach, and I know this IPAS Learning Center, they do language as well, Rotuman language. But I think Fiji's got a huge population in terms of humans, and so the opportunity is there. University or community groups or church groups to actually start the language. And I know that Rotuma is actually looking to revive. They're doing the art and crafts. There's a lot of things that people could go back into the space. And I'm even encouraging our young ones here to actually go back into the space. Come in, youth. I mean, the future is them, the children and our young ones. So while we have it and while we're still here, it's the ability for us to actually pass on that knowledge to them. And so our young ones become, you know, the undertakers for our language moving forward. Yeah.
That is so true. Involving our young people is so key, and I'm sure you make the classes fun and engaging. You know, to keep the students keep coming back. That's the most important thing. What would be your encouragement to our Rotumans who are listening in tonight and those who will watch our live later on in terms of the Vosa Vaka Rotuma and the importance of learning it? If you would like to also speak in English and Rotuman as well, that'll be great.
Faeksia. Yeah, I think there's a lot. I'll speak first in English and then I'll wrap it up in Rotuman. But I believe one of the things through the journey, language doesn't limit you anytime you want to learn. And it doesn't matter if you've never learned the language. I've got students that have come in way back in the, you know, they're older, but they're learning the language. So I'd like to encourage everyone, don't be ashamed that if you want to learn the language, whatever age you're in, it's all about a journey of your heritage and embracing your identity. And I guess that's what it is. And I want to encourage everybody, look, even if, you know, I've got people who, the young ones who understands it, but now they're coming to practice. So the language is part of us. And it's the basis of us that drives our culture. So it's important for us to take the first step as Rotumans and having that journey, seeing other races become more interested in our language. That means that's the courage and the challenge for our people to actually look. If you think the vision for us and for me personally here in New Zealand, how could we sustainably and consistently carry the language even if I'm not here? You know, and one of the things I say, I don't have children, but I do this for the sake of our future, for our children that's going to come. And working to fight for platforms to actually ask for funding to support our language. Our community actually are coming together to deliver the language week in the next week. So this is my encouragement to everybody around the world. If you have time and you can put your knowledge forward or to help our language, I encourage you, whatever space you're in whatever form, if you can do art and craft, do so. But whatever spaces you're in, drive the language and consistently do so to help our people. So yeah, if you're learning the language, jump in any way you can, put it out there and someone will help you out. So that's my encouragement, you know, language is us, that's our identity, it's our heritage. So we must learn to embrace it, because if we don't, then who's gonna do it?
Yes.
Yeah, so you know, to tina sangat to ko ni no ha foi me lang ni pengti ni utu ni renti o it's not yet ko ma tina rakek vi finglele no ka le po la rakek fiang rutom ta ni hoi viang on ine ere ko hun sos fiang rutom ta sang fa kanu te isa na va ere ko hun se la ne os fiang ma os sang fa kan hanu elang ni tronti i me pau mong pola rai lalang ni at ni hanuiti is ni sirongi tu pau e rekunsi la faf ma ku ni fiang rutom te tronti i te faksorek i me ni as tu ko ni lit parak fiang rutom fingalili ma farek si dali ni inya lalang ni renti ni utu te noho la iris la rakek se e fiang rutom ta manava hio titi is yo tit ni musi isa pasti fakanisi dengan aca nasi istu tua koa la taang os feina os hoifinganga os kananga la pola so kitiniava te antiu no ai tiri nasi tu koa olulum se o se la lani tiranti masih nasava ni kan kanum no ka us la pola tiang cia ma tamisi siam tu ai ni sirongi pingalele ka otomisala la nengaru te la rakokif tapi ma no amate
Vinaka, rong Vinaka. Itu na nomu Vosa Vaka Rotuma. Klani besar na wekantar varong tikumai. To all our Rotuman families listening in tonight. So beautiful to hear the Rotuman language being spoken, and acknowledging Fesaitu Solomone for taking the lead in teaching this beautiful language in Auckland. And I'm sure there are interest in different parts of New Zealand, Christchurch, Hamilton, in Wellington, Fielding. I understand there's lots of Rotumans in Fielding, and also the different church groups in Auckland. And I really want to say Vinaka vakalevu to you, Itu, for the openness you have to encourage the more language teachers out there, the more programs that are out there, the better it is, for the language. And to also encourage our young ones, taking on the language is, I always look at language as a key, to opening up that door to knowing more about ourselves. Because in the language, there's so much in the proverbs, the idioms, the chants, and the songs that you will only understand what you're singing or what you're reading if you know the language. And the best way to do it is to go take up these classes. Itu's class is online, and it's on Zoom, and it's free. So there you go. There's no other excuses, ladies and gentlemen. So go on to the Pacifica Education. What's the
Pacific Education Center.
PEC. Go online, Google it, and you will find it, and enroll. So the more enrollments that Itu and her team will have, the more programs and the more teachers too that will be able to come forward and help Itu and Nathaniel in teaching of the classes. That's so wonderful. What else do I have here? Anything you want to say as well about the Rotuma Day coming up next month?
Yes, so our team here, so it's the first time, and that's what I was just inviting our Rotuman families. If you're here in New Zealand, in Aotearoa, what I do is encourage you. For the first time, we collectively have come together to celebrate and to present the Language Week. And then we've got groups, like I say, from Canterbury. We've got the New Zealand Rotuman Fellowship, which covers Wellington group, Moironi, which is an Auckland group. And also our Rotuman Youth of New Zealand. So all the youths are coming together. It's a huge, huge event that we're going to open next week in terms of our language. We also got our church group is involved with us. We have the original Rotuman Auckland group. We also have a church group part of it. Our Rotuman Wesleyan Church, we had our Streams Community Church, which is part of all of our fikos, our reverends. And we also have, let me not forget, there's another church group, Kingsland Rotuman Church as well. So these are the core of our Rotuman. All our independent reps from independent members are also present. So our collective committee works with the ministry to present and set the program for the week, and the support from ministry in terms of funding, and the ability for us to present our culture and language to showcase here in New Zealand. So yeah, it's happening starting on Sunday next week. An opening ceremony, opening launch at the Auckland War Memorial Museum, which is Tamaki Pahingahira here in Auckland, in Tamaki Makaurau. So definitely, if people are not welcome to come and join us. We also have, and especially I think this year is the 140th anniversary of Rotuma being ceded to Britain. So it's a monumental celebration for us. And also part of that, to highlight, we're having a closing ceremony, the first time through the ministry and the Pacific communities actually recommended to the ministry to have a program to recognize our language champion honors. We have, Rotuma is leading the way in terms of delivering it first. So we will have the first language champion honors for our language weeks with our Rotuman language. So there will be 3 people who will be recognized from our community, and it's going to be an ongoing nomination and winners every year. So we'll have a male, a female, and a youth member. So that's the work that we've been collectively working, and even across the Pacific, I do work closely with many of the Pacific Island groups. But this is part of the work that we've been doing. There are other projects that I'm working on the side as well in terms of the Rotuman language. But yeah, this is the delivery that we're going in next week, and we're hoping that anyone who's available, programs are going to be online. You can watch them online. There's going to be face-to-face. We're having a huge celebration at Te Papa Museum, but Te Papa is only hosting a certain number of members. But yeah, for our closing ceremony or in our opening, if you're here in Auckland, you want to come and join us, We open the ceremony. The launch is on 9th of May. We close on the 15th of May with a big celebration of our Rotuman community. And we're witnessing one of the biggest ever hafa, tautonga, that we're going to present in New Zealand.
Wow, that's excellent. Wow, we're all looking forward to be part of that. And we will definitely be keeping an eye out online in terms of identifying or knowing the Zoom link. So I'm sure lots of us will be watching at the Auckland Museum, and it's really nice to hear Te Papa as well in Wellington coming over and acknowledging the Ministry of Pacific Peoples. I think that's a wonderful thing as well, to really acknowledge the ministry as well as PEC. And if Christine Numinen is listening in tonight or later on, I'm sure she'll remember the day you walked in to visit her in Manukau, or I think it was in Otara.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also like to acknowledge as well, I think there's a prominent person that helps our Rotuman young ones here as well, as Jacinda Stowers Ama from the Pacifica Arts Center. And also, I think even with Sunpeaks, who also supports our Rotuman language, these are organizations and people that have put in time for our Rotuman people here. There are many of them, across the ministries, Ministry of Education, Ministry for Social Development. There are a lot of ministries that help support our community. So yeah, that's the acknowledgement in space, and our people who actually come together to celebrate it.
Wow, I think it's really nice because now that you see Aotearoa, they're doing all this amazing program, this might spur a lot of movements maybe to our Rotumans in Australia, Rotumans who are listening in from the Middle East or from England, and also from the US and Canada. So congratulations, Aotearoa. And I think Mrs. Marietta Ringamoto was mentioning it as well on Tuesday. She's listening in as well. Mrs. Ringamoto, I'm sure you will be part of this amazing program. Yeah. And congratulations to the organizing committees for the hard work you're doing behind the scene to make this Language Week for Rotuma, 140 years anniversary, a very successful one. Yeah, so Vinaka Vakalevu itu from all of us, saying Vinaka Vakalevu to you, and keep up the good work over there in Aotearoa.
Faeksia, and Vinaka Vakalevu to you for allowing me to speak tonight. Faeksia.
Yes, Vinaka Vakalevu, and we will continue to see you online, and we'll be part of the event on the 9th of May. Yeah.
Naka.
Okay.
Faeksia.
Yeah. Nakavalevu. Yeah. Mode.
Ololo.
Naka. So. Nakavalevu to everyone listening in to Fesaitu Solomone, sharing with us the beauty of the Rotuman language. Yeah. So if you want to learn, check her out. Google Pacifica Education Center in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and you can enroll. And the classes are free. Nakavalevu. Nakavalevu Ravai, Binti Kitei, Nakavakalevu, Kemdona Buli Mai Dadli. Thank you so much for listening in. Alalu makikia hadisio makarita erasito. Nakavalevu Sara. Nakamwana. Nakanavara mai mwana pasala. Laloma to you both in Gleniness, Auckland. Yes, Nakabola Faith Harrieta, Faeksia. Nakananise Tabuaiwai, Nakavalevu Neta, Bola Marawa, Dobula May Dubai. Naka na siya mamay. Nakabalik, nakabola di kasi ni ma, nabulu nakameo kalandi. Iliana Voli, nakabalik tao, naparong chikumay. Mersenia likanagaya matay. Chonim batiwale, nakabalevu, tumbulu mena mara levu, naka neta. Tumbulu me Mongolia, Losalini Batikota, Faeksia, neta. So nakabalevu na siya mamay. Teribos senido, nakabalevu may Mongolia. Mataka ni siya matalimay. George factor phone and meron do bulan chicken ni matak. So nakabalev sar na siya mamay. Vinaka na Vito ko ni Rotuma. Nakabalev Sara. Iya. Saba mo chikan bikim nito doko. Vinaka tanong kay sa ni mataka. Ni mo demanda.